Thank you for joining us for opening remarks, and welcome to WordCamp US. Woo! Woo! This is a very empty room for opening remarks, but I have no doubt we'll have more people joining us throughout the day, and we also have however many people we have on the live stream. So hello, live stream people. Everyone say hi to the live stream people. I'm Cami Chaos. I'm from the WordCamp US national team, and this is my 4th year working on WordCamp US. Coincidentally, this is the 4th year of WordCamp US, and boy, I'm just a little tired. Okay, I've been running around all morning. I'm sorry. I found out this morning that I was giving you opening remarks, so yeah, that's what you get today. We are super excited to be here in Nashville for the 2nd time, and we're so happy to see some familiar faces and some new faces. So how many of you have been to more than 50 WordCamps? I knew you were raising your hand. I knew you were raising your hand. How many of you, is this your first WordCamp? Wow. Good morning and welcome. I'm really happy to have you here. How many of you somewhere in between? Yeah, that's kind of what I expect to see. All right. We have a few housekeeping issues. So if you haven't been to a WordCamp yet, we're a little more casual than some events. Stuff comes up at the last minute, and we just kind of try to wrangle it as best we can as we go. So let me tell you a few things that we need you to pay attention to. But I'm not going to answer all of your questions. I never do. I don't even know what your questions are yet. So if you have a question and I didn't answer it, please feel free to stop anyone who is wearing one of these sangria-colored t-shirts. It's got the lovely record on the front. It's got the volunteer on the back. Those are our volunteers, and we could not do this without them. You can also stop by special registration, which is right next to regular registration, and that is our help desk and also our lost and found, and it's also where we send lost children. So if you have, we don't just like grab lost children. If we have lost children within the conference, that's where we send them. So if you have lost a child within the conference area, please go there to find them. We take inclusion to heart here at WordCamp US and in the WordPress community. We want everyone to feel as welcome here as we do. On that note, we ask that everyone here at least reviews the code of conduct. You can find it on signs located throughout the venue. You can also find it on our site. It's a top page item. If you feel like something is not quite right, if you feel like you have received a violation of the code of conduct, if you feel like you have witnessed a violation of the code of conduct, if you feel like someone's just being nasty to another person and it makes you uncomfortable, please let us know. You can find one of the volunteers in these t-shirts. Hopefully they weren't dabbing their face with it like I was. Or you can find any one of the organizers in these colorful rainbow lanyards. We think they're pretty awesome, so we keep using them. And let us know what's going on so that we can take the person somewhere quiet and have a conversation with them to find out how we can help, how we can improve the situation. While we are talking about making people feel comfortable, I'm just going to read right off this paper now. We are a nut-free conference. We've made a lot of jokes over the last, we've made a lot of jokes over the last few days as we have tried to get our catering team to eliminate every nut and nut product from the entire area that we are in. It turns out that pecan pie, full of nuts. So no pecan pie for any of you, but we, on a serious note, have several attendees with serious nut allergies, life-threatening inhaled nut allergies. So if you have nuts on your person, please do not open them. Don't open the bags, keep them sealed. We do not want to contaminate the area. If you see nuts on any of the food stations, because try as we might, they keep showing up, and sometimes I just think I'm being punked, but it is a serious allergy. We really do not want a repeat of what happened last year when we had to have EMTs come out and take someone to the hospital because of an inhaled reaction. If you see a nut anywhere, please let a volunteer or someone in a rainbow lanyard know so that we can make sure to decontaminate the area. All of the organizers, as I said, rainbow lanyards, all of the volunteers, sangria shirts. If you are a volunteer and you do not want people to ask you questions, change your shirt. Ultimately, we're here to you, so even if you just want to say hi to one of the organizers or thank you to one of the volunteers, please feel free to do that. And now, actual WordPress-y stuff. We have 2 days of amazing content, today and Saturday, and we also have a contributor day on Sunday. There's 2 tracks full of great sessions. There's 3 if you count the hallway track, which is where you're going to get to know one another, get to know our amazing sponsors, get to know our organizers and our volunteers. If you have any questions about the actual schedule for the talks, you can go to 2018.us.wordcamp.org/schedule, or you can look at any of the large posters outside of the rooms. Now, the hallway track. It's on the mezzanine level, so you just take the escalator or the elevator, or you go all the way around the building and then around some more, and then like up some stairs. I don't recommend that particular way unless you're trying to hit your steps. And on the mezzanine level, we have coffee, we have snacks that do not include nuts, we have Commemorative Swag that is a navy blue version of this t-shirt. And I wasn't going to tell you what the other special swag was, but they started giving it out already, so we have these really cool slate coasters. So you can go up and grab those anytime. It was supposed to open at 10. They opened it early. There is also all of the sponsors that you could hope to find here. And there is a swag store and also our second year community bazaar where we have WordPress communities throughout the world represented. We have had a couple of changes to our schedule. Unfortunately, 2 of our speakers were unable to make it for various reasons. So please check your schedule, check the site to make sure that you have the most updated information when you're looking for a session. While you are looking at things and grabbing swag, don't forget that up in that room, you can go to the Get Involved table to find out today how you can get involved in the WordPress open source project, or you can get help with your computing needs, not all your computing needs, at the Happiness Lounge that's also in the hallway track. Lunch. I hope you're not hungry yet. Lunch is going to be at 12:30 on the 3rd floor, Exhibit Hall B. It ends at 1:30. We have some awesome Nashville favorites, and they want me to push the smoked beef brisket because they tell me that it is excellent. I, however, would like to point out that we want to include everybody, and not all of us like smoked beef brisket, although I do like smoked beef brisket. But we have a lot of vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free options. We have food for everybody. If you don't see something that you can eat on the buffets, please flag down the volunteers and ask them to take you to the catering staff. We have some specialty plates for specific people. We do have some folks that have ordered kosher meals. If you have a special meal that you know is ordered, ask them. If you can't find something to eat, ask them. If they can't help you, rainbow badges. We will make sure that you get something to eat today. Swag. I told you about the swag. You can pick it up. I jumped the gun on that one. I was all swag, 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 swaggity, swag, swag, swag. While you're picking up the swag, you're probably going to want to take a picture of the swag or of the people or of the sponsor halls. If you want to take photos of WordCamp US, we love it when you take photos of WordCamp US. We just ask that you hashtag it WCUS. If you forget that, it is on like every single sign that we printed, I hope, and I think. And I also really hope that all the Wi-Fi info is on there, but if you were here last year and you got on the Wi-Fi, you should be able to automatically join. Okay, how many times have I said the word volunteers? So, oh, thank you for pretending to count. We could not do this without our volunteers, and I know I see a few scattered throughout the room. One of them's walking around. Some of them are incognito at the moment. So can we please have a huge round of applause for all of our amazing volunteers? With the exception of our venue staff and a few other very specialized folks. Hey back there, y'all awesome. Everyone who runs this event is a volunteer. Our speakers are volunteers. Our sponsors pay us lots of money for the privilege of being here. Our organizers are volunteers. Our volunteers are volunteers. And so if you see anyone who's working on this event, please thank them and let them know that you appreciate them because we couldn't make this happen without them. Also, I wasn't joking when I said I was running around all morning. I am just, it's way warmer in here than it is outside. We have an amazing group of sponsors, companies who not only support WordCamp US, but also support the WordCamp program and the WordPress open source project. So please, when you're in the mezzanine level, stop by those sponsors and say thank you and pick up all of their phenomenal swag because there's some really great stuff up there, and I'm going to sneak around and get some later as well. We'd like to specifically thank, though, our 2 highest levels of sponsors. First, our diamonds. Thank you to Bluehost, Jetpack, Google, and Woo. Also, our platinum level sponsors. They did a record theme this year. SiteLock, WPMU Dev, DreamHost, GoDaddy, SiteGround, and WP Engine. Thank you, sponsors. Yay, sponsors. Okay. We're kind of changing things up. Normally we do the after party after the event, but this year we're doing the after party after the first day. So there will be an after party tonight to which we would like to cordially invite you. Your invitation is your badge. I am not joking when I say you will not be allowed in the venue if you do not have your badge. It starts at 8 p.m. and it ends at 11, and we're back at the Adventure Science Center. We have a digestive system model, a moonwalk, which I did not get to do last year because I didn't know I needed a ticket, dinosaurs, VR exhibits, flight simulators, the popular brain game where you like stare at a coin or a ball and you like move it with your mind. I was tired. I did not do that one. And we also have an amazing planetarium show that will keep happening on a loop only for the WordCamp US attendees. The Adventure Science Center is closed to the public tonight. Again, badge. If you are traveling with a partner or a friend or a child that is not present at the conference and you want to take them to the after party, if they are over the age of 9, you will need to stop by registration and register them for the conference. We can only allow registered attendees of WordCamp US to attend. If you have a child with you and they are under 9 years old, stop by registration and pick up a free child badge, and you can take them to the after party with you. Okay. State of the Word. State of the Word will happen tomorrow in Exhibit Hall A at 4 p.m. And for those of you who are not familiar with State of the Word, it is Matt Mullenweg's annual State of WordPress, where he keeps us updated on everything that has happened, everything that is happening, and you all get a chance to ask him anything that's on your mind. There will be plenty of room up there. We have seating for everyone, but it never fails that people like to line up beforehand. There's no need to do that, but if you must, we will have a stanchioned area this year where you can hang out, and all we ask is that you don't block the doors and that you listen to the volunteers who are there to help you. I am almost done talking. This paper informs me that I'm almost done talking. There are a lot of important things to tell you. It took a village for WordCamp US. It took a community. I wrote that last year, and they kept it in. And we're looking for help with another one. We cannot tell you yet when the WordCamp US will happen next year, but I can tell you that it's going to happen in St. Louis. And at 5 o'clock tomorrow, you will know the date, and the call for organizers will be open on their site, which will be 2019.us.wordcamp.org. So check that out if you are interested in being a national or a local WordCamp US organizer. We'd really like to grow the team and have a larger community. Are you ready to get started? Oh, thank goodness you guys look. This is all that's on the 3rd page. It's tiny. All right. I think we're ready to get started. Why did they write this down? We're ready to get started. Are we ready to get started? All right. I'm going to escort myself off the stage. I'm going to go drink a lot of water and sit down, and I hope that you either stay in here for a great session, or you go into the other room for a great session, or you go hang out with our sponsors, but most importantly, have an amazing day, and let us know if we can help you.
Hear you. Good morning. My name is Joe Simpson. I represent the WordPress community in Santa Clarita, California, the valleys of northern Los Angeles. Welcome again. I've got some numbers for you. Miriam Schwab has been involved in the WordPress space for 14 years. She founded and grew one of Israel's leading web development companies. She's a 5-time organizer of WordCamp Israel. She's presented 3 speeches at WordCamp Europe. This is her first time in the U.S.
Well, I've been to the U.S.
WordCamp US, that is. Presenting content security policies, list your trusted sources, and prevent attacks. Please welcome Miriam Schwab.
Thanks. Can you hear me? Like, does this work? Yeah? No? Yes? Okay. Great. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here so early. I mean, I barely made it. Just kidding. I was totally ready and here on time. Coffee helped. And I'm jet lagged because I did come from Israel, which was a long and painful journey. And we're having trouble sleeping, me and my team members, but I'm awake, kind of. So, but if I don't sound so coherent, please forgive me and just wave, and I'll try to form full sentences. So we're going to talk about content security policies, which is, I think, a fascinating approach to security, but of course, it's also incredibly geeky and nerdy. So I hope you guys find it interesting on some level. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Was this working? No. Okay. Fingers it is. Yeah. So I founded a WordPress development agency based out of Jerusalem, Israel, and I did that for about 12 years, and we worked with leading tech companies and universities, nonprofits in Israel. Wrote a blog that was widely read, but stopped blogging, which I'm sad about. I don't I mostly post on Facebook, if anything, or Twitter, and no more long blog posts, but I used to do that pretty well. And a lot of the tips there were followed by people in the WordPress community. I basically documented my WordPress discovery journey. I thought, if people helped me, that's how I learned, right? In the WordPress community, from other people's posts, I'm going to write what I learned, and then hopefully that can help others. So, so I wrote that for a while and organized WordCamp 5 times in Israel until they made a policy that you can be the lead organizer up to 2 times. So I kind of surpassed that. And it was actually really good timing because I really needed a break. Like, organizing it 5 times is a bit much. Someone else was supposed to take it over. It didn't really happen. So hopefully we've restarted the WordPress community meetups in Jerusalem. We were having monthly meetups, which is great. And hopefully we're going to do a WordCamp in 2019. So stay tuned if you want an opportunity or an excuse to come visit Israel. And since then I founded a startup called Static, serverless and static publishing for WordPress. I can tell you more about that. And here are my other 7 startups. Yes, I have 7 children. Yeah, and they're the joys of my life. So anyways, that's about me. So what happens when you load a web page? What happens is that the browser identifies what it should be loading into the browser and displaying. And that can include a lot of assets that aren't necessarily on the server with the website. Some of them are, some of them aren't, some of them are loading from different domains, etc. And what you will see is that if you look at the page source of a lot of websites, this is a very prominent news site, they will be loading assets from all different sources. And you can see here, Balance Exchange, Adobe, Amazon, etc. And a recent study showed that on average, websites are loading 42 scripts that are external at any given time. So we're depending a lot on third-party services and third-party scripts in order to make our web pages functional. And over 50% of all page requests are third-party calls. So without us really noticing, we're adding more and more to our websites that we don't actually really have control over. There's a big trust factor here, but it's just so easy. You just insert a JavaScript, piece, and you're good to go, and you've got some new functionality or new tracking, and that's what we're all doing to our websites, including the very large ones. How do web apps get compromised? So first of all, it can be on the server side, which is like SQL injections, which target the entire website, right? And it will compromise the files or the database. And that's 76% of total exploits are that kind of attack. The other kind is on the client side. And those are called cross-site scripting attacks. And cross-site scripting attacks are kind of the oldest method of compromising a website. They've been around basically since the dawn of the internet. And it's one of the most widespread. You would think that if it's been around for so long, it would be less of a threat, but that's not how the internet works necessarily. There's constant efforts to try to mitigate it, but it still continues to be a very serious threat. What it does is it allows an attacker to run a script in the user's browser, and the browser can't tell the difference between a script that is authorized to run and a script that is malicious. So this is what happens. Browser loads all the assets, including this terrible, evil JavaScript, and the browser accepts it and runs it. And then it can do all sorts of terrible things to the site. And because it's to the user, actually, and because it's accepted in the browser, it actually has the same permissions and access as the browser has. So cookies, web storage, forms, the DOM, it's all got the same permissions as the site itself. It's been in the OWASP top 10 forever. It's now in position 7. And it's the second most prevalent issue. It's found in 2/3 of all applications. At any given time, huge amounts of websites have cross-site scripting vulnerability. So with cross-site scripting, unlike the server-based type of attack where it modifies something on the server or the database or the files, here the victim is actually the visitor of the website. And here are just some of the things that can be done to a visitor to a website like this. Session hijacking, cookie theft, account takeover, redirecting traffic, stealing account credentials, displaying unwanted ads, virus and malware infections, keylogging, etc. So lots of fun stuff. And these are things that we definitely want to be preventing so that our visitors can safely browse our websites. One example of a recent attack like this that used a third-party service to infiltrate websites was a hack called the Browse Aloud. So Browse Aloud is an add-on that a lot of British government websites added to their sites. It's an accessibility add-on. It's text-to-speech. So that's very useful and nice and good for a government for trying to make their sites more accessible. In Israel, that is not the case, so that's great. But what happened was the sites are all loading this third-party script, which they trusted. And then the script was modified by hackers. And all of those sites, instead of being text-to-speech accessible, became crypto miners. So, yeah. And you're talking about, how many sites was it? Let's see. Thousands, over 5,000 sites got this vulnerability and were mining cryptocurrency when visitors, using visitors' CPU and resources when they were visiting these British government websites. So that's just one example. Why is that bad? Okay, crypto mining, like whatever, because it slows down the devices. It can take CPU to higher levels. If you're anything like me, you might have a lot of browser tabs open, so you can't afford to have your CPU used anymore. Battery drain, overheating, puts a load on your device, etc. So, and of course, a government should not be mining cryptocurrency. We had that actually in the WordPress community. There was a weather widget that was in the plugin repository, and the person who developed it didn't realize that the resource that they were using to display the weather was also crypto mining. Thing. So that's another example. But the very biggest, most significant type of attack is the Magic Cart one. It's very interesting and very widespread. So basically, Magic Cart has been going on for the last 3 years. It took a really long time for anyone to realize that this was happening. And it's a group that nobody really knows who they are. And what they do is they identify third-party scripts or services that websites are using, and then they hack those. So at first, when Magic Cart started out, they would actually hack the site directly. But then they came up with this approach where they would identify a tool that was maybe easier to hack, and then they would hack that, and then they were able to apply their hack to the sites that had that script installed on it. So these are just some examples. And what they did was they became credit card skimmers. So when people would fill in a credit card form on any of these sites, they were able to grab the credit card information and, of course, use it for malicious purposes. And it's estimated that thousands of sites have been affected by Magic Cart, and it's really hard to track because they're very smart. They modify the script in a way that looks like it's meant to be there. So it's difficult to identify it. Okay, so that brings us to content security policies. The idea behind content security policies is that, okay, so we're in this world of the web where we're all installing who knows what on our sites. I'm guilty of that too. Just 2 days ago, I found a shiny new tracker thingy and I installed it on our site, and then I was trying to debug it. I was like, why isn't it working? And I was like, oh, right, because we have a content security policy that's not allowing me to be irresponsible. Good. So what it does is basically you whitelist sources that you have deemed to be trustworthy and okay to load on your site. And then anything that's not that will get blocked by the browser. So it's a header that talks to the browser, and the modern browsers, except for, of course, Microsoft. Microsoft has partial support. They all support the content security policy header, and they will respect it. And so it will load whatever you say that it can load when the viewer loads the web page, and it will block anything else. So basically, the way that it works is, okay, I'm loading a web page, and I've authorized Google Fonts, I've authorized Google Analytics, I've authorized my own images, and then I have not authorized this other resource, and the content security policy won't allow it to load. And if these websites had content security policies properly implemented, Magic Cart would not have been possible. So in terms of browser support levels, there's a really useful site called Can I Use? if you're ever wondering what is supported in browsers in general, and you can check out which browsers support content security policies and which version. This is the support for content security policy level 2, but in October-ish, October, level 3 was rolled out. But Chrome and Firefox support it. Safari 2, I think. Of course, Microsoft always lags behind. So how does the content security policy work? What do you have to do in order to create one and implement it on your site? So there's two parts to it. There's the directives, which are the type of assets that you want to limit or control. So you can tell by their names kind of what they are, fonts, frames, like iframes, images, media. Media is like video, and objects. Objects are Flash type of content. Scripts, which is JavaScript. Styles, which are, of course, CSS. And then you say, okay, now for the fonts, I only want the site to load fonts from, let's say, my website, or not at all, right? Like for the object source, a lot of content security policies will say none, because you don't want any iframes loading. Those tend to be a pretty popular way to breach a site. Self is my own domain. So anything that's sitting on, let's say, mysite.com/whatever, then that's accepted. Star is a wildcard. Use that carefully. And Unsafe Inline, Unsafe Eval, which I'm going to talk about. So this is the default content security policy. So when you start out, you could do content security policy default source none, and that's a good way to actually try to identify through the console, and I'll show you how, what assets are trying to be loaded, and then you can say, okay, I need to whitelist this, I need to whitelist that. Or you could start with self, because it's probably the case that you do want to load assets from your own domain. What this actually means, the default source, is it covers these directives and makes them all self. Okay? It used to be that it didn't cover everything, but now I think it pretty much covers all of the directives. So you've covered that, and you said, okay, those are all self. And then you can tweak it further. So you can say, okay, self for the script source, but also I want Google Analytics to work. So I need to authorize that by whitelisting it. Fonts, same. Object source, like I mentioned, probably best to do none, unless for some reason iframes are important. You can also, by the way, tweak it so that on a per-page basis, it will accept things. So if you know you have an iframe on one page, you can have a different security header on that page. It doesn't have to be site-wide. This is my favorite content security policy directive. Basically, what it does is if you have a site and has mixed content, right? Now that we all need to have HTTPS on our sites, and it's very important, you might end up having a site, a legacy site or whatever, a migration that didn't go 100% smoothly, and it still has some assets that are HTTP, like an image or who knows what. And then you won't have the padlock on that page, which is very sad. So this, instead of going and finding it all, which you can do, it says load all assets as HTTPS, even if they're HTTP. So it's like a one-step HTTPS for everything directive, and it's 100% effective. So it's great. So that gets a big emoji from me. Defaults. Oh, right, the reporting. Sorry. Okay. So what's really useful about the content security policy is that there's an understanding that websites are dynamic. They change. We add things. We remove things. And it's really hard to keep track of it, especially as the site gets larger. So there's a reporting capability where you can have this directive, and it will collect information about violations of your content security policy. Now, violations don't necessarily mean that someone's trying to hack you. It might mean, you now have a YouTube video embedded in your site, and you haven't authorized that. You haven't whitelisted it. And so it's violating the content security policy, and then you can whitelist it, and then your YouTube video will now appear on your site. So, and then what it does is it collects the data and sends it as a JSON to the URL that you define. So here it could be CSP reports or something like that. If you start to do research about content security policies online, the problem is that there's not a lot of information out there, and some of it's outdated. Even though they've been around since 2012, they're not widely used, people aren't really familiar with it, and The documentation, well, there's the standard documentation from the W3C, but that documentation is never, ever legible. I don't know if you've ever tried to read their documentation, but it's the worst. You just go in circles, and like they use English. Like, I don't know who's writing it, but Google has some really good documentation, but even their documentation is not updated to CSP level 3 in some places. So what you might find is some mentions of these directives, and is that 6 hours? Okay. Some CSP directives that look like this, the X ones, and they are no longer supported. But you might see tutorials or whatever that will say use it, don't use it. Okay, but the irony is that even after you've whitelisted everything, all of us are going to have inline scripts. Google Analytics is a perfect example. Despite the fact that Google is a huge advocate of CSPs, and the bottom line of CSPs is that your assets need to be an external file and not inline, Google Analytics and other Google tools are inline. And in order to enable that to work, you need to use something called Unsafe Inline and Unsafe Eval. Just the names are like, ooh, you're doing terrible things to your site. I'm allowing my site to be unsafe. But in order for Google Analytics to actually work, you need to add these directives of Unsafe Inline in order for the script to be accepted by the browser. And once you add that, then inline script injections are possible. And despite all our hard work on the CSPs, our sites are still vulnerable. I gave this talk, first version of it, at WordCamp Europe, and we implemented this for ourselves and for our clients, and this really bothered me. I was like, so what are we supposed to do? We're all supposed to take our inline assets and make them external. That's a huge job, and will take a huge amount of debugging. And the internet's actually like the way it is. It's just not built that way. That's a crazy expectation. So other people thought that, obviously. This is what the directive looks like if you want to have unsafe inline and unsafe eval. So one way to get around this is to create a nonce for every script, but it has to be randomly generated on every page load. It's not so simple, but you have one, and then it's applied to all the scripts that you authorize to load, and that can protect you from the inline script because any inline script won't have that randomly generated nonce. It's unguessable. So that's one solution that came up, but there's a challenge with that, which is caching, right? You can't really cache a page in that case because you have to change it every time. Hashes is another thing that you can do, which is you create a hash of the script, the inline script that you want to authorize. So it's that way if it's changed in any way, then the hash no longer matches the script, and then it won't be accepted by the browser. But the problem with that is that if you're using a third-party script, then it's SaaS, right? So they're generally updating it. And so then the hash, if they make one update, your script's going to stop working. And sub-resource integrity is a way also to say this is a script, and this is like kind of a stamp on it, and but also it's problematic in terms of maintaining it. So researchers at Google identified this, and they took a look at the content security policies that were implemented on 1.6 million websites. And they found that 94% of them are bypassable because of the issue of the inline scripts. So they came up with this directive called script dynamic, which on the one hand is not the simplest thing to implement, but on the other hand, it means that it reduces the challenges in a number of ways. So basically, I'll just explain how it works. You do the nonce, and they have documentation explaining how to do it, random site generator, random number generators, etc. Inline event handlers is the most challenging thing here because they need to be refactored. And on every page load, generate the new nonce. So they're recommending the nonce approach. Despite the issue with caching, they don't address that. But basically, what this approach does is it takes everything that I just told you about, which was CSPs until a few months ago, and says, okay, we don't all have to try to figure out what we need to whitelist, because that's really challenging to keep on top of it. It means consistently analyzing your pages and knowing what you've added and adding it to the CSP and doing that properly. And then there's the inline script issue. So no more of that. You create this kind of one policy called strict dynamic, and that applies to everything always. It's kind of like a one-step solution to the CSP craziness. And this is like an example of how it looks. So you do the script source, nonce, and then some random number. And that will be the nonce that appears, that's like appended to every script on your site that you're okay with. Strict dynamic, report sample, whatever. Unsafe inline. The reason unsafe inline is there is for browsers that don't yet support level 3 of CSP. So then it will be implemented, and then you go back to having at least a CSP with unsafe inline, but it's better than nothing. Object source none, etc. So that's their new recommendation about how to implement CSPs. So there is a challenging part of doing the random number, but on the other hand, like I said, it's instead of consistently trying to maintain an update, you just add a random number to all the scripts that you are okay with, and from that point on, you're good to go. Like it's much easier. As someone who's been maintaining CSP for us and others, this is much easier. Google has a few tools. This is like a cool tool that allows you to see what your browser supports. So it's the strict dynamic test bed, and when you load it in your browser, if you see these squares, then it means that it supports the strict dynamic. Okay, so how do you add it to your site? So there's HTTP headers, right? So you do it on the server level. That's the ideal way to do it. You can actually do it in your functions.php file. That will work too. And you can also do it with a meta tag. So the meta tag can be useful if you need to do per page tweaking. It can make it easier. But the meta tag doesn't support some directives. Most of them. It doesn't support, I can't remember which ones. But the most important ones it supports. Oh, here, frame ancestors, report UI, or sandbox. You can do it in htaccess. But the most recommended way of doing it is as an HTTP header that's deployed to the pages on your site. Some tools that can make your life easier. The console in the browser, that is your friend. So if you're ever trying to figure out why something's not working or whatever, go in there and it will, first of all, you can see the content security policy in the console. It's under network, right? Yes. And you can see the whole setup there of your site and any other site. And also it will help you debug, because it will show you very bright red errors if something's trying to violate the CSP. This is another tool for checking your HTTP response headers. This is a Google tool. What it does is it identifies parts of your application which are not compatible with CSP, because that's the hardest part, figuring out what needs extra loving care. It helps make necessary changes before you deploy your CSP. The Csp Evaluator is a very simple tool from Google. Just plug in a URL and it will say you don't have a CSP or you do have a CSP, and if you do, it will give you some recommendations. This is the best and easiest to use tool. It was created by Scott Helm, I think. He's a big security guy. Very interesting to read his work. So you just plug in a URL, and then you get a report. So this is actually the White House. They get a big old red F. So I'm showing that to you just because A, haha, and B, you can feel better about your own site. Because if you have anything better than an F, you're doing better than the White House. There's some WordPress plugins that will help you manage your CSPs. So it will help you create the meta tags, and there's some other tools that are useful in terms of managing them. Some of them haven't been updated for so long, so I don't necessarily recommend using it, but it's an easy way to get started and maybe just start testing it out. This is another one. I'll put this online, and all of these link to the resources and stuff, all these images. This is an amazing tool, the report URI. So they have a wizard for creating your CSP. And you say, okay, I want this to be self, and this to be this asset, and this to be that asset, and then it gives you something that you can just plug in to your site, and that's really useful. The reason why it's recommended to still have a whitelist is because of the browser compatibility issues. So that way, if it doesn't do the strict dynamic, then you've got the whitelist. This is a great tool, but sadly, it only runs on Windows. It will analyze the page and tell you, give you an output of all the assets there that you might want to whitelist for your CSP. In terms of adoption, so this is from February, and the top 1 million websites, only 23,000 have content security policy in it. So you can see that adoption is really low. I mean, there's more by now, but it's not growing very quickly. But as front-end client-side threats and threats like the Magic Cart become more prevalent, people are going to start implementing it more. And also, with the new approach from the researchers at Google with a strict dynamic, I think it will make it something that's also much more possible for people to implement. So this is a little example of what happens when a site doesn't have a content security policy. I injected something on the front end. I did not hack their site. It was just on my end, but this is just, I would not be here, actually. I would have been stopped at the border. They let me through. But it's just an example of like how if you don't have a content security policy, you can actually inject whatever you want into a site. And let's see if this will have sound. Oh, is that? Oh, no. Do I have to get down and plug things in again? Oh, okay, that's something. 1 second. Oh, yeah. Is there sound? Does anyone know if like the sound will work? Maybe. Yeah. Wait a second. Oh, sorry, guys. Hold on. A what?
Just like a headphone before.
Oh.
Do you see that?
All right. I will give you a play-by-play then. Oh, great. You don't see anything, right? Ow. Yeah, I can't see anything. I'll look on my phone and see what's coming next. Anyways, what happens is I inject the script and it plays the Harlem Shake. Remember Harlem Shake? And then it makes the whole web page dance. It's very entertaining, but you'll have to trust me on that. That's something I can't really do a demo for. So, but anyways, yeah. So that's just an example of how a lack of CSP enables you to inject what could potentially be much more malicious on a site. So the White House should implement a CSP. I mean, this should be a good example, at least from that point of view. And I think that was my last slide. So yeah, CSPs for the win. They're crazy, but they make a difference, and they're increasingly important, and we're going to see more and more threats on that level. Just one thing that I didn't mention is that it doesn't prevent the cross-site scripting. What it is, it's called defense in depth. It's like another layer. So what it is if your site is breached, because cross-site scripting is so difficult to identify and control, you've got this extra level, and then it will protect your users, and then protect your brand, protect yourself from being sued for credentials being stolen, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think this is kind of part of the future of where the internet's going, and it's very interesting, and it's worth keeping an eye on it, and I hope that was helpful to you. And if anyone wants to see the video later, I'm happy to show you the White House do the Harlem Shake. So thank you.
We've got a couple minutes for questions, so who's got them?
Does the content security policy actually prevent the types of problems that you were talking about with the, a script that's being loaded from a third party changing without my knowledge?
Right, yeah. So if the script is changing, in order for them to inject into your site, they would have to know what the nonce is. And they can't, because if it's set up properly, it's randomly generated. It should be long enough and complex enough, and etc. But it's unguessable. So it prevents that. And if they try to inject anything, that's for something that exists. And if it doesn't exist yet on your site, then also there's no nonce there that matches the header. So nothing. They can't do anything.
Also, the nonce is generated in the body itself.
So the nonce is generated in the head and in the HTML. So that's, like, in my opinion, the next thing that has to be tackled, because we want to be caching things, right? And to have to generate a new page load on every visit, it's resource intensive, slow, etc. It's like, that's not where we want to go. But I imagine that there's going to be fixes for that, because the internet isn't a place of caching today. You can't work that way. But in the meantime, that's how it is. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah. Me first.
How important is this for the average, user's website versus a larger organization that's probably taking data from people?
So, like everything with regards to security, you have to do the pros and cons. Like, is it worth it for me to invest the time? How big is the threat? It's possible that on small websites it's not so critical, but as it gets easier to do, it's kind of like HTTPS, right? Like, how critical is HTTPS for a small website? It's critical. And we should be making every effort to protect our users also. So yeah, it's a pain, but it's definitely worth keeping in mind. And I do think it will become easier to implement, because it has to. It has to be something that we all can basically implement as easily as possible. And that's generally how things go. So yeah, it's like you have to do the cost-benefit analysis for yourself. Anyone who's doing transactions of any kind, or even capturing user information in some way through a form, probably should be doing that.
Thanks, Miriam. Great talk. I wanted to ask and build on the other person's question who asked about if the script changes without your knowledge. Maybe not so concerning if it's like Google Analytics and you probably trust the code they're pushing onto your site. But if you've got third-party scripts from developers that maybe they stop developing the project or they somehow get into malicious hands, is there anything that content security policies can do to help with that, or is there anything that you would recommend to be able to know if that's happening?
Well, if you've implemented the content security policy and the script gets into malicious hands, then they can't do what they want to do, because again, it comes back to the nonce and it not being there, and so any changes that they make won't be accepted by the browser. So the functionality will stop working altogether, but that's better than malicious activity. So yeah, no problem.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for your talk. My interest is with Apache or Nginx. How is that implemented at the server level? If you could speak about that a little bit.
So that's you probably need web developers to do that. It's different for each one, and it's how you would manage your HTTP headers. So it's on the server level. It's not like something that can be easily explained right here.
In the back.
Thank you for the information. So when you're writing your rule set for this, I saw you had 7 different images, videos, whatever. Do you have to write a new rule for each content that you want to protect, or can you combine it all into a single rule? And if you have to write multiple, is that resource intensive at all to the user's browser?
So there's 2 sides to it. There's the one side, which is if you have a content security policy, and let's say it says it's self, then like a YouTube video won't work. So if you want functionality to work on your site, then you have to create a directive for it. And that's from that point of view of just enabling functionality to even work. If you do a content security policy that's too broad and allows everything, then you might as well not have one, I'm not sure if that answers your questions, but if you have one, you need to whitelist assets if you want them to work, and then the bad stuff won't work because it's not authorized. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. Oh, so it depends on your use case, like, and also how much you want to protect it. Like, let's say object source, which is Flash and stuff, you should probably just put in none, just to be safe. And it depends how much you care. Like, let's say the fonts, you could say only, let's say Google fonts if that's what you're loading, or you could just leave it, and then theoretically it could load a malicious font. But is that going to happen? I don't know. You don't have to define them all, and that default source. If you do default source self, then that covers everything more or less in terms of saying anything coming from my domain is okay. But then again, if you add something that's not from your domain and you want it to work, then you're going to have to tweak the relevant directive for that.
Yep.
Thank you for the talk. The plugin that you mentioned, does that add the nonces that you were talking about?
No, so that doesn't exist yet in an easy way. Yeah, unfortunately. It's also relatively new, and these are kind of old and not so well maintained, the plugins.
Incidentally, there will be a Hacker Day on Sunday if anyone wants to try adding it in. Any other questions? Hands high, please. Okay. Thank you, Miriam.
Pleasure. Thank you. 3,000 minutes left.
out on the live stream. A year ago this time, I was at home using that live stream. So if you see me tug on my cap or if I'd say a joiner word or a filler word, tweet me. Anyway, one of my fondest memories about WordPress is my very first WordCamp. It was around 2011, and it was at Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles. And as I walked into the WordCamp, the sponsors were out along, and I stopped at this one table, and I signed up for some information. We had great conversation. I was brand new to the project, and I got a website for life. I still use that website, and it was on WP Engine. After building and selling 2 bootstrap startups between 1999 and 2008, Jason founded WP Engine in 2010, which now manages 500,000 WordPress sites, 90,000 customers, and has 600 employees all around the world. Austin, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, London, England, Limerick, Ireland, and Brisbane, Australia. Presenting WordPress leads the charge in mobile web. Please welcome Jason Cohen.
Thanks, Joe. Remember, the website's only for life, no other purposes. That's what it's specifically designed for. So how do people of different generations use the internet now? We went out on the street, which is very dangerous, especially in Austin, and asked. So I want to show you what they said.
Hi everyone, Andy North with WP Engine here. We're out on the streets of Austin, Texas today, talking with a variety of different people about their attitudes about the internet. What generation do you identify with the most?
I would definitely say I'm a millennial.
Gen X?
Yeah, I'm early 90s, so I'm a millennial.
Born in 1944, so that is a little more before the baby boomers, but right on.
We'll give you the baby boomers there on that end.
Kind of like in between Gen Z and millennial. I was born in 1999, so.
When you access the internet, what do you primarily use for it? Is it your laptop, a tablet, a phone?
My phone. My phone gets me from point A to point B. Check my email, music, you name it. Yeah.
I have a home computer with access to internet and work computer that I can access things on the internet.
How long do you think you could go without accessing the internet?
I have it with me all the time. I probably don't go 20 minutes without picking it up for some reason.
Probably a couple days.
Maybe like a weekend. I mean, it depends what the circumstances are.
How do you think you'll connect to the internet in 5 to 10 years?
I'd have no idea.
More platforms are going to be created. I don't necessarily think as far as access is just going to be ramped up.
In 5 years, it's going to be the same. Hopefully I have a newer laptop by then.
What does being online mean to you?
I think it means staying relevant.
I just use it to keep in touch with people, so I'll creep on Facebook and see what people are up to, or send invites out, or see what my circle's doing.
Honestly, I don't delineate it into categories. It's sort of like my arm, right? It's like, oh, well, I can talk to people. I can go shopping. I can look up information that I need. I can become entertained. There's no categorization. It is, right? It just is.
All right. It's my arm. It just is. Also, it's a guy still getting on the information superhighway. Some of you weren't alive when Al Gore said he invented this information superhighway. Anyway, so the answer is mobile. Mobile is how people are primarily accessing the internet now. You hear it there from their own mouths, but the answer is phones and other things that are mobile. And there's this amazing data which shows that laptop usage hasn't changed at all in about 8 years. Not at all. All the growth is in mobile. And it eats away into some of these other things, et cetera, but it's just mobile. And the mobile line there is bigger than the other bars. And you've probably seen this in your own websites or your clients' websites or your customers' websites that mobile traffic outstrips laptop traffic. And this is going to continue. One reason is because of demographics. You just saw people who are younger tend to skew mobile more, and of course they're going to exist and new ones are going to be made because that's how it works. Also, when countries come online, they're consistently far majority mobile. Every time a new country comes on, really online, like more than half of their population's on the internet, that sort of thing. It's not through laptops; it's through phones. So this is a trend that will continue because of the sort of forces that are here. Another interesting thing to notice about this is the very top of the bars. It's not that the internet usage is constant and more of it's shuffling to phones. That's not it. Our laptop usage is still high. It's still the same as it was. It's that we have new usage and it's on mobile. And a lot of that new usage is relevant to all businesses, whether they're selling to other businesses or whether they're selling to consumers, or it's media who are quote-unquote selling, but it's really page views, or whether it's attention that you're trying to get, like media. So it doesn't matter what is going on. This is important. Another thing that people say is, okay, but what about commerce? Because with commerce, I don't know if it's still the phone. So we had a study last year that said that people would prefer, and I'll show you the data because we refreshed it this year, so I'm going to show you fresh data. But last year we had data that said that 60% of the people would prefer to transact with e-commerce on a phone than a laptop. And everyone said, that doesn't make sense. That's not how I feel. So we just had Thanksgiving in America, which in America is one of the biggest shopping days on that Friday and also the following Monday. And really throughout the weekend, it's a big time in America. So the numbers just came out. And during this huge shopping time, it's called Black Friday because that's when retailers typically go into the black instead of the red, because that's how big the day is. More online commerce happened on mobile than laptops. So that crossover point in commerce, not just browsing around and doing stupid things, in commerce, that crossover point has now happened, like right now, which is pretty cool. So the data we had last year suggested that might be the case, and now it just came to pass. So that's cool. So if you're a marketer and you're hearing this, you think, okay, I guess I have to be not just good at mobile, but maybe even mobile first or mobile primary or something like this. I have to. I don't have a choice. So I guess we have to make apps. This is a logical conclusion because that's what mobile phones have, is you open them up and there's apps. So I need to make apps. So here's a fun thing to think about. How many apps do you think a person downloads, an average person downloads per month? Because if I'm a marketer, I'm going to make an app. The idea is people would download the thing, of course. So just think how many you think an average person downloads per month. The answer is 0. On average, none. So making an app is probably a bad idea. That's probably not how to get in front of people. The number of times people use the web application on their phone every month is 99%, 100%, something like this. We didn't ask that, actually. So it's 0. And so apps is actually not a good way for a marketer or anybody, but let's talk about marketers since they're our clients, our customers, our customers of our plugins and themes, our clients of our agencies and so forth. So let's talk about marketers. So plugins or apps is not a good way for marketers to reach people on mobile. And even if you do have an app there, people use on average 3 apps. So the idea that someone will download it is almost 0, and the idea that then they use it later is almost 0. And you probably have a phone full of apps where this is true. You downloaded it 2 years ago. It's on page 7. And it literally isn't worth your time to go to page 7 and delete it, although that's what you should do, right? So it's a security risk. Good. So this is the reality is, like, it's mobile and it ain't apps. That's what the data say. So that's useful to know. So another thing that's useful that the data show about mobile is performance matters. And this is not maybe a surprise. Performance always matters in software. It always matters on the internet. Google will rank you higher if your website's faster. People won't bounce off your site because they're bored waiting for your site to load if your site's faster. Of course, faster sites are going to be better. So on mobile in particular, though, there's all this data, and these are all from actual studies or large companies like an Amazon or Google looking at all their data, which is quite a bit. So a 1-second delay in page load reduces sales 20%. You've probably heard numbers like that, but think about that for just a second. You're a business, and your revenue goes up 20% just if you make your site faster. Like, if you really let that sink in, it's hard to imagine something else you could do at your company that's more impactful than making your site a little faster. And yet, on average, and I'll show you this data in a second, on average, sites on mobile take more than 2 seconds to load. In other words, there's no doubt that this is money. Money, like dollars, not somehow tenuously, indirectly tied to, no, it's dollar bills, and yet almost no one's doing a good job at it. This is an opportunity for everyone here. Whether we're making products, whether we're building sites, whatever we're doing here with WordPress, this is obviously an opportunity because it's real. So I want to get to so this is all data that you can get from various places. We also did our own data, which I want to present to you now. And what we did is we asked a whole bunch of people stuff. This is all, you don't have to read all the details, but the point is we asked people. We partnered with a firm called Vance & Bourne, who are experts in doing surveys, since we're experts at WordPress and running WordPress and building stuff on top of WordPress, but not doing surveys necessarily. And so we partnered with people that do this for a living. And so we asked people a whole bunch of questions. I'm going to give you all the answers that they gave right now, of course. So the question is, what are our customers, in other words, marketers, what are they thinking about mobile? Never mind the data about what's happening. What do they think? Because that's how we're going to sell to them. That's what they're going to be building and doing. So that's what we need to know if we're going to be successful with mobile too. Most of these are also enterprise. A lot of people say, hey, I know enterprise marketers have all the money, but I'm not sure what to say to them. I'm not sure what they're thinking. I'm not sure if they're even using WordPress. I'm not sure what they're doing, et cetera. So here you're going to find out. This is what they're saying and doing with mobile, and then I'm going to also show you what they're doing with WordPress so that you can specifically go and make pitches to enterprise marketers also using with their language and what they're saying. So let's get to it already. So first of all, what do you use to build mobile sites? This is what we asked. What systems do you use to build mobile sites? And remember, enterprise. And you'd expect answers like Adobe Experience Manager and Sitecore and and Acquia and these other folks that are on the Gartner quadrant and all this kind of stuff. That's what you'd expect. And the answer is, yes, those are all there. The number one is Adobe, and the tied for number one is WordPress. Now, today. Not we have to go convince enterprise to do it. Right now, it's more. You might notice that these add up to more than 100%. Is that weird? No, it's because people use more than one thing. And I'm going to give you more data on that specifically in a little bit. But that data is not wrong. It's because they use more than one thing. This is part of the advantage. Just because somebody uses a big tool like a Sitecore or Adobe does not mean they don't also use WordPress. In fact, usually they do. That's our opportunity, right? So, okay, they use WordPress to build mobile sites in the majority. That's awesome. What are they doing with mobile? Like what's going to be important? What are they trying to build with it? So we asked about technologies and things. Now, historically, what I would say is people have thought about mobile as we just need to make sure it looks right and acts right on all the devices. And so we'll make reactive displays, or we'll have different versions or whatever, and that's what we'll do for mobile. That's the tech we're using. It's not really a different tech for mobile. It's just that the layout will be different. That is not the future. That's what we learned in the last 10 years since the iPhone came out, is that's probably a good idea. Duh. But 85%, the vast majority of marketers say that what we need to do next is AMP and PWA. What is that? Well, we could spend a whole hour on just what is each one of those things. So I'll do it really quickly, just touch on what it is, because really the answer is got to go dig in separately. So AMP is a technology originally by Google, but it's adopted by many people like Cloudflare and others. It's not only a Google thing, even though it's spearheaded by Google. And the idea is to make a site fast by limiting exactly what it does. How much CSS is there? How much JavaScript is there? How is that loaded? What can go in there? How can the page act? Lots of things that cause the site to be fast. And so when you do that, your site does load very fast, it's very responsive and so forth, and it's nice. So that's one thing that almost everyone says, we're going to be doing that. So if you want to get work or make plugins or et cetera, in the WordPress space, in mobile in particular, AMP is a fantastic place to go because that's what everyone says they're doing. And the other one is PWA, Progressive Web App. What that really means is making a website act like an app. So nobody installs apps, that's cool, but there's things apps do that really nice, like they work when you're offline. That's good. Like I have my boarding pass, and I need that to work even when I don't have the internet when I'm at the airport, because it just needs to come up. Or the articles that I want to read when I'm on the plane, or if I'm going in the subway and the internet's coming in and out, the articles just need to work. So offline's important. Another one is push. I can send push notifications out if I have an app. Normally the web doesn't support that. So how do I get these behaviors like offline, like push? There's other ones too. And the answer is PWA is a technology where you can do all those things with a web app, and it works on all devices, including Apple and Android and blah, 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 blah. Wow, that's kind of cool. So you could argue that Google also invented this because apps means Google can't see what's inside the thing, and if it's on the web, Google can see inside the thing, so Google span of control is better if you use PWA. That's the skeptical and probably right answer. The other thing is all of these features are really valuable. Push is awesome. Being on the home page is awesome. Working with an internet connection that is sketchy or gone is very awesome for the user experience. So that's the non-skeptical and also true thing about PWAs. Anyway, this is what everyone is, like almost everyone, is implementing. So if you haven't looked into these things before, then that's a good idea to go look at. So what else? So when we ask people, how's your mobile experience now? Like, how have you built those sites? Is it good? Are you guys doing a good job? Do you think? Do you think you're doing a good job? And only 29% said, yeah, we have a good mobile implementation. So less than a third feel like they're doing a good job now. Again, opportunity should be in your head right now. What could we do for them? Furthermore, we asked about performance, and they said, and again, almost everyone, 82% said, my mobile site loads in more than 2 seconds, slower than 2 seconds. We just said a few slides ago that's like 20% of your revenue if you're a media company or an e-commerce company. 20% of your revenue, and almost everyone says, yeah, that's our problem too. Again, huge opportunity here. Most people, the majority are using WordPress to solve these problems. You can add one and one, right? Another reason not to do apps is if you need more. But if you're pitching to an enterprise, maybe you need more reasons not to do an app. So one of them is that people don't use apps. That seems like a good enough reason. Another reason is it's expensive to do apps. And so when we ask people, how much do you spend, or again, the marketers, to develop a mobile app if you have, and how much have you spent to develop a mobile website if you have? And the answer is that apps cost twice as much too. Another reason not to use them. Fantastic. Interesting is the actual numbers there. $500,000 to make a mobile website. Does that sound good to you? I hope so. See, it's where all the money is. Nice. So here's a really funny thing people said that I actually personally don't agree with, but it's what they said. So it's useful, again, getting the minds of your customers is useful to know, that 2/3 said that they believe that when you add all this up, it means the end of the App Store. Now, I don't think it's the end of the App Store. Like, you're still going to there are going to be apps. And there are really good reasons, maybe games, maybe email. I don't know. There's going to be good reasons to do apps. To me, it's a bit silly to say no more store. I don't know about that. But the fact that so many people would say that indicates their mindset about what they think about apps. So that's useful to know. And this latest data, which is just from a few months ago, by the way, I didn't mention that, I guess, but it's very recent. Now 70% say that vast majority of Americans would prefer to do e-commerce over mobile and live. Again, we just fortunately got the data to back up this idea, which is good. It's always good when the data say the same thing. They don't always, do they? Anyway, so that's nice to know too. Okay, so all this has been about mobile in general, enterprise maybe somewhat in particular. It wasn't 100% enterprise we talked to, it was just majority. And so that's useful. But then a final thing, if you're asking, okay, how do I sell my product, my plugin, my theme, my agency, et cetera? How do I sell my services or products to these folks that are building mobile, et cetera, and obviously are spending a lot of money on it? That all sounds really yummy. What else am I going to say about WordPress? Like, they're clearly using WordPress a lot, but still I have to sort of sell myself, sell WordPress. How do I do that? So I want to expand slightly outside of mobile only and talk about how we look at why enterprises in particular choose WordPress. And again, we did another study. There's a different one also with Vance and Bourne on this topic. How do people select CMSs? And why do people select WordPress? Because again, if we can get insight into that, then we all know, like, oh, okay, these are the kinds of jobs or the kinds of products, et cetera, that will work well. So let me show you that data. So this is a different study, same kind of format, but a different kind of study on this more broad topic of CMSs. So first of all, kind of explaining that other data point, more than half of the people we talk to use more than one CMS. They may use Adobe and WordPress. They may use Acquia and Sitecore. They may use et cetera, right? More than one, which kind of makes sense because, of course, Adobe is good at many things. And of course, WordPress is good at many things. And they're not the same things. And so it kind of makes sense that you'd need the right tool for the job. You may not want 10 different systems. That's too hard to manage. It's too hard to specialize. But one is maybe not sufficient for a complex organization. Anyway, it may make sense, but it's also true. And in this other study, when we asked, well, what do you use? Again, the data came back essentially the same as the other one. Again, it's always nice when you ask the same kind of question in different ways, get similar answers that suggest the data are in fact true. So it's nice to see all that. Umbraco, what is that? Have you guys ever heard of that? I didn't. Anyway, Go Joomla. Okay, so there's a lot of choices. And why do you pick WordPress? I mean, after all, if you have Adobe, which most people do, I guess, it does everything. I mean, at least in bullet points, it does everything. And so why would you need WordPress? Why would most people also pick WordPress, which is what most people do? Why? How do you pick what goes on WordPress and what doesn't? And here's the answer. So faster time to market, which means how fast can I go from an idea to something's launched? When I need it to be easy to use. When I need agility. What does that mean? That could mean anything, I guess. Here's what it means specifically when we ask this question. Time to market is 0 to launch. Agility means once it is launched, how easy can I change it? Because I'm going to be doing A/B tests and I want to implement whatever's good. Because I'm going to be launching new content. Because I'm a content marketer and I'm going to make content. So I need to be able to do that without a lot of fuss and so forth. How easy is it to change after launch? Especially for enterprises, a lot of times it's easy to make changes before launch because whatever, just make a change, no one's looking at it. But after you launch, especially in the enterprise, it can be very hard. Well, millions of people are looking at this every day. We have to make sure it works everywhere. So even a minor change needs to be tested everywhere. And so a little change takes maybe weeks in the enterprise. So this agility thing is actually quite important and different from the 0 to 1. And experimentation when I want to try new things. I'll give you an example of that in a second. So there's more, but you get the idea. These are the kind of critical places. When there's a job in which this is valuable, then WordPress is the right tool for the job, says marketers, says all of our collective customers or potential customers. So how does WordPress do that? It's useful to articulate this. I'm going to go quickly because everyone here knows these things roughly, but it's useful to actually list them because when you're pitching your product, your service, etc. to them, these are the points which will resonate because this is what they say that they want and how WordPress fulfills it. So this is how to sell it, in other words. So it's worth repeating in this particular way. So there's several things. First is integrations. There's a million things that all marketers have to integrate with. Our own website, wpengine.com, integrates with 23 different vendors. And we're not even as complicated as like a Walmart.com, right? So you have to integrate, and integration stinks because things don't talk to each other and there's APIs and things change and it's hard. But WordPress, as we all know, is built to be integrated with. It's like Legos, right? We can plug in plugins, plugins can plug into plugins, if that makes sense. So it's like Legos and we can make whatever we want and that helps integrations go well. We also have, of course, the Json Api, which also helps integrations go well. So for example, we have enterprise customers where they use some other system like Sitecore for content authoring, but then they use the Json API to suck it out of that other CMS and into WordPress for deployment because of those things. They can deploy fast and it's inexpensive and whatnot. They use two CMSs on purpose because WordPress is so easy to integrate with. So this is something specifically that people build in the enterprise. That's one, integrations, and everyone has that problem. The second one is the cost. We know WordPress is less expensive because the PHP doesn't cost anything. But if I build it out just slightly, you'll see an argument that, again, you can use to say why this is useful and valuable for enterprise to do. So normally when you use Adobe, first you have to pay Adobe a bunch of money just to have the code. This is equivalent of downloading the zip file from WordPress.org. You have to pay money for that. Then, of course, you have to pay your agency or in-house team to build it. Then you have to implement the hardware, so you got to set up servers and think about security and I don't know, all the nonsense. And then there's ongoing maintenance costs because you have to keep upgrading it and pay Amazon for the servers or whatever you're doing. Of course, these are the pieces. So with WordPress, you don't have to pay that because you get to download the zip file. But WordPress is not free. WordPress is free like a puppy dog is free. You can have it, but then you got to take care of it after that. But it still is cheaper than having to pay for the puppy dog, so that's good. And you still have to build it and so forth. And maybe if you use any one of the many hosts that are present here today, then the implementation is easy. You still have to pay them though, so for the hosting somehow or another you got to pay to go on. Still, you can see you're saving money. That's good, but don't make the case that you're saving money, and that's the worst argument. Because guess what? You don't. The marketers have a budget, and that's how much money they have, and they don't save anything. No, they don't like take the money and give it to each other. We saved it. Like, let's give it back. Maybe engineering can use it. They never say that. Let's give it to sales. They could use some more people. And no. So actually, it's not true. So it's not a good argument. Here's a good argument. There could be a project right now, and it's going to cost, right now, it costs you $400,000. So you can't do it. You don't have a budget for $400,000. But with WordPress, it would only be $200,000, so you can do it. That's an argument. I can or I cannot make an entire campaign, make an entire site, create a whole experience. That is the difference for a marketer between being able to make an impact or not saving money. Or another one would be, why don't you take all that budget you have and put it all into build? I can see all the agencies are like, yeah, exactly. Give it to us. We know what to do. Put it all in build and make something incredible. Don't just make a thing. Make an incredible thing that has high engagement and does all this stuff. Like, make something amazing. Don't give it to Adobe. Give it to your agency so they can make something mind-blowing so it works better. Because that's your goal as a marketer, is for things to work better, not to save money. CEO doesn't say how much money you're saving. They say how many leads did you make. So take the money and make it more leads by doing projects that were not possible otherwise, or by making the projects way better, by giving it to the makers. Right. Okay. Another one is you can go to market fast. This one's maybe obvious. You want to launch things fast. You can't do that with big systems. You can with WordPress. This is actually a big area where Gutenberg is helpful. I know, oh, Gutenberg, oh, there, I touched it. I touched Gutenberg. What do I think about Gutenberg? Oh. I love it, and I'll tell you why, because this particular point of being able to launch things fast. So in our marketing department, we make landing pages for crap when we release a new product. And we'll make 10 or 20 landing pages. What? We do. We make 10 or 20 landing pages for the product, because we got to A/B test and stuff, because nobody knows what people will click on, so we guess, and we let data tell us, right? So you got to make a lot. So that used to take us about 3 weeks, because we'd have all these concepts about design and content, and then we'd give them to the designers and the whatevers, and they cut them up and they make the thing, and that's the normal path. It takes 3 weeks to make a bunch of pages. Duh. But with Gutenberg, what we're able to do is make blocks that have all the stuff, all the components that we might need, and then we just assemble stuff, and it's very easy to A/B test this one versus that one and this and that. Also, it's nice to put power in the hands of the end users. They can make what they want. That's nice. But that power can be abused. As we all know, it's a two-edged sword when you can do whatever you want. And so one of the things that would happen when we previously tried to give our marketers the ability to do anything they want is they would pick weird off-brand colors that didn't look right, and layouts that were bizarre that makes designers' heads bleed from the ears. And so we'd say, okay, so you can't do anything you want. So we actually can make blocks where it's like, yeah, you can pick the color from this list. Yeah, you can change the layouts within these constraints. So the designers are happy, and the developers can verify it works everywhere on different devices. And the end user can do this, mix and match and make landing pages or whatever, but within constraints that makes it actually all acceptable and good. That is a beautiful thing, to give power to folks, but not quite the power to break it, right? This is a great thing. So with this, we were able to build those same pages in an afternoon. 3 weeks to an afternoon is a huge difference. And modularized, componentized stuff is part of how that works. So again, in this topic of how fast can I go to market, this is a good example of how that is. Okay. The last one is experimentation. And again, this was one of the items, right? This is the fourth item, experimentation. So as a marketing, even a mature marketing organization, most of what you do is well known. This is our brand messaging. These are the events we do. Here's how our homepage works. Here are the campaigns we do. Here's all their direct spend. I mean, it goes on and on with all the stuff that they do. But there's always this frontier of experimentation. What is the new thing? Let's try Pinterest. Let's try to support, I don't know, VR, AR. I don't know. We got to try the new stuff. Half of it won't work. Maybe more than half won't work. But we have to. We have to try stuff. That's how it goes. So there's always that experimental angle. And when it's experimental, all those other things I just mentioned that WordPress is so good about is exactly what you need. You need something that's not too expensive. You can't run super expensive experiments. That doesn't make sense. It needs to be easy and fast and get feedback fast. And since it will be wrong, you have to be able to change it quickly and be agile. Like, what you need for experimentation is what WordPress is good at. So it makes sense. This is actually a screenshot from a AR-powered WordPress site that Anthony Burchell made. He's going to be at Contributor Day and helping to run Contributor Day too, so you can say hi to him anytime, but especially in Contributor Day if you're doing that. Great example of experimentation. Now, I know all of our marketer clients are not clamoring for us to make AR websites right now, but they will, because here's why. There will be a Christmas where 1 million AR headsets or VR headsets are sold. Will it be this Christmas? I don't know. I don't know when it'll be, but it will. And then the marketing world will go, oh, another place for ads and influence and I don't know, whatever the heck, things. We need to put stuff in that. We need to understand that. And they're going to need to experiment because nobody knows what the heck to do with that, right? So it's going to happen. And it's not just AR, obviously, it's just an example. There's many things and we don't even know how to predict. So how do you operate as a marketer in a world where you don't know what technology will come and you don't know what timeline it is? How do you prepare for stuff that you don't know? And the answer is by having tools that are easy to use, flexible, easy to integrate, inexpensive to experiment with. That's the tool set you need to attack the unknown. And that's what WordPress is. So when you're attacking the unknown, which you might call experimentation if you're a marketer, WordPress is the perfect tool, not the thing that takes 9 months to build and $1 million. That's the wrong tool to use for attacking the unknown. So that's where WordPress is good. So I think we probably all agree that we would love it if WordPress were 51%, sorry, of the internet, as Matt has said for a long time, and I also think is awesome. That'd be great. So I'd just like to say it won't be on laptops. 51% means mobile. And today that already means things like phones and tablets. In the future, I don't know, all that stuff and other stuff, hard to say. But this is what 51% actually will mean, because WordPress is at an incredible 32%. But there's still a gap between 32 and 51. That's a pretty big gap too. And that's where that stuff's going to be. So whether you want to look in 10 years ahead at how to get to 51%, answer is mobile. Or if you want to ask, what do the majority of marketers, even enterprise today, what are they concerned with? What is their traffic? What makes them the money? What are they building? What are they looking at? And what are they using WordPress for? The answer is mobile in these specific ways. So I hope that you can use this to build products, to sell services, to make websites, to do all kinds of things, for all sorts of folks using this in particular to say, this is why you need to use my thing and attack this, this trend, which is, of course, not going away. So I hope that was helpful. Thanks.
All right, we've got about 15 minutes for questions and answers. If you have a question, get your hand high because I'm going to be running to you. What do we got? Okay, John Brown.
So I like your point about PWAs becoming the future of things and that websites are still super important. One of the things we hear from clients who want us to build mobile apps is they want it in the App Store. They want that visibility to access it and get it installed as an icon, which is very different than the bookmark experience. Can you talk about that at all? Like, do you have thoughts on that?
So I think people want that, and I think it's vanity. Like if you ask them to produce data that shows that being in the App Store means people will download the app, it's difficult to show that, right? So So I think the truth is that won't help much, but that doesn't work all the time. Sometimes like, yeah, but I want it to be in the App Store though. And so of course it is possible to use effectively a shell. In other words, it is an app, it is in the store. What it's really doing is downloading stuff from the web and et cetera. I think that's the best way to conserve development resources in the development of it. Like the way to not conserve is to say, look, we'll have a whole mobile website that does everything. And also we'll make the whole Android app from scratch that does everything, because that's a whole other team, and also iOS, and that's what we'll do. That is the way to spend the most amount of money. It's okay. But the best way is to say, somehow we have to reuse stuff. We can't be doing that. And so, there's various technologies, of course, that allow you to say, I'm really just embedding a website inside of an app, wink. But it's an app that goes in the store. And so that's the way to conserve. Now, there are also rules, because Apple doesn't really want you to do that, because they want you to make apps, because Apple wins if more things are in apps as opposed to the web. So it's sort of at odds. So Apple has these rules about what you can and can't do. So of course I don't want to get into all these little details, but that's your challenge, is to try to put the web inside of an app to conserve development effort, and then follow the rules so you actually stay in the App Store. And they change the rules, so that's a difficult tightrope.
In the mobile usage chart that was shooting through the roof, there was a point in 2011 where laptops sort of went there and they just plateaued since then. Any idea like what what the hell happened in 2011 where it was like, you know, I don't know.
No, I don't know that there's an event.
I mean, just maybe the surgence of phones into the market. Yeah. Okay.
I remember when I got an iPhone, I would do things like just go to a site because, look, it's on the phone. Right? Really, like, and so like you show people, you know, or I wonder if this site works, you know. So I don't know, you know, how much of it is that. There's always also a lag between technologies available and, in general, it really is usable. So is there a lag between 2008, iPhone is launched, and it really hits this critical mass of, and people have them, and websites are designed for them better, so it's practical. Because a lot of times you go to a site and like, I can kind of see it, but not really, and it's kind of slow. And so it didn't really work right. And so maybe it took some time. So I don't know. I don't know that there was like an event like this was launched or this technology was done. I don't know that it's like that. But it's possible that there's just simply this lag of technology diffusion that was needed for that to occur. This guy's doing wind sprints all day.
I don't have a question. I just want to see you run. No, you talked about the PWA being able to view the website offline. So do you have certain techniques you've been doing to download that website to be able to do that?
Yes, and PWA is full of ideas for how to do that and frameworks for how to do that. The general idea is this, that in the first place, the content, and that means images, it means text that you would pull from somewhere, it means dynamic stuff, personalized stuff, etc., all of the things that can mean content. The idea is that all that content should be listed as like, here's what this page needs, or here's what this thing does, and separate the system of displaying things from the system that goes and fetches things. So the idea is that I could fetch a page or other content that is needed by linked pages or the top most common content. The idea is whatever I might need to go fetch in terms of the content is a separate subsystem from actually displaying pages. Thus, I can fetch and even cache the content separately from what it means to display and interact, for a user to interact with that content. So that means I could open a website and it could go itself decide, I'm going to grab content and from the top 10 articles and it could be doing all that in the background. And you don't see that because it's this other engine that's sitting there doing all that. But then you go in the tunnel in the subway, the internet's out. But when you go to the next page, it asks this engine, hey, do you have this stuff? And it says, yeah, fortunately I do. Or maybe it cached it from a previous time when you were online or so forth. So by separating this, where's the content, how do I cache it, how do I get it, from how do I display it? The display can just pretend like the content's available all the time, or of course operate in some fashion if the content's not available, and the content can be stored. Now you might say that's kind of like a browser cache, but it's not, because browser caches are fickle, they may not store it, it can be purged at any time, they have a finite size. Like there's all these things about a browser cache where that doesn't work quite right. So by declaring this is how we want to use it, we want deterministic behavior here and so forth, you can actually control how that works really well as a developer. Now you might imagine, that doesn't sound simple though. It sounds like I have to, as a developer, think about stuff and categorize stuff, and what does it mean to crawl stuff? How do I know? And that's right. That's part of the challenge is, if I'm going to use this framework and get these benefits, I'm going to have to design my sites in this new way, where I have JavaScript on the front end pulling from this engine, and an engine that works in some new way. Yes, I will have to re-architect the nature of the site in the first place to work this way, as opposed to, say, being generated by a WordPress theme. That is the challenge, is that it's a whole new way to architect. Why should I bother? And the answer is, because if you bother, all these really interesting features become available. So that would be the reason to do it.
And then so basically the entire PWA might not be downloaded, just the majority of the most commonly used pages.
It could be. You could download everything. It depends on the site. If you're CNN, you can't download all archives, right? But you could download certain things. It could be based on the user. This person often looks at this and that kind of topic, so I'll download it. Or even more, I've logged in and I've decided what content I want. It could maybe download it in the background. So there's no reason why the operating system of Android or iOS can't allow Chrome to download stuff even when you don't have the web browser open, as long as you, the user, approved it, of course. So it can. So just like your Pocket app is doing that, or your Mail app may be doing that, or your to-do list may be syncing in the background, right? There's a lot of apps that sync in the background. Similarly, that could happen in the background. It could be that CNN's doing that in the background, again, hopefully with permission. And so that when you open it up, it's just there even when you're on the subway, and even though you hadn't been there. So to you, it looks like this is just there. That's like magic. What's really happening is there's this content engine which is being allowed to do things, again, hopefully in a sane way. And if so, that really is a better experience for the customer. I might add one more thing, which is they're instant. Like you touch it and it just goes like that. And you just go, what the heck just happened? And the answer is, it already had the content. So
really
in other words,
handling-
the speed and performance angle that's so important here becomes perfect. And that is a huge benefit as well. So it's a lot of work to do, no doubt. But perfect performance, offline and shoddy internet performance still perfect, is pretty amazing as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
So the concept of mobile-first design creeps up. There's articles everywhere about it. I'm curious about your thoughts, considering that we're going to move from just these few things over here to possibly all these things over here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's an answer to it, but I'm interested to hear how you would approach something like that.
I think the answer is API first. The thing that all those have in common is they are on the internet. They can talk to something. What they don't have in common is what does it look like, what they do with it. It may not even be visible to the customer at all. It could be some kind of internal data that they do or data that they're sending out. It could be a sensor that's sending out data, and there is no UX there at all, right? So what they do with it, what it looks like to the customer or the user of that device, whether it's displaying or not, whether it's just reading or it's writing, that varies from between all devices. But the fact that it's talking to something is the commonality. So to me, API first is the answer. And so if everything in the site can happen via API, then I can make a PWA. I can make anything in any technology, actually. It doesn't even have to be PHP. It doesn't even have to be JavaScript. Like I can do anything in any technology I wish. That's pretty powerful already. Also, any hardware that's on the internet can make a web connection. That's how it works now, right? We've decided that's how it goes. So API first means that your WordPress system, maybe it's the hub or the backend, is talking to everything, whether it's a viewer, display, end user, or whether it's something else. So API first, I think, is the solution.
That's cool. Thank you. And on this side. There was? Wait, what? Oh, you're joking. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you so much. And our next talk will be in about 17 minutes.
during the course of the session. Yeah, move closer to the center here. So. We'll get started in a minute, but if we could scooch in and sit next to someone, that would be great. Yeah, for those of you who are just coming into the room,
show the love.
If you could
Show the
pair
love.
up.
Come on. You can't sit by yourself. Somebody sitting with you? Oh, how about you'll be able to turn around and work with this lady. Everybody's going to work with somebody. Come on down. Sir, move on down. You're going to talk to him. Great. Nobody should be alone in this world. You should not be sitting by yourselves. And welcome the person who moves over. Big smile. Okay, you're going to work 2 by 2. It's like the arc here, guys. And women. And men. And everybody. Don't sit by yourself. It's lonely. It's lonely that way. There's a guy right in front of you, a person. An individual. Right? All right. I got like one person moved so far. I'm working it. I'm working it, Joe.
Okay. All right. I'll have an announcement as well as we're getting ready here. Lunch is going to be on the 3rd floor in Hall B. Take the large escalators or elevators up.
You guys going to work together? Okay.
All right. For those folks that are watching on live stream,
you couldn't be any farther
tweet
away.
me at Joe Simpson Jr.
Oh, good. Fabulous.
Well, you missed the running joke. Every time I do a filler word, like a or an or a but, folks out in the live stream are supposed to tweet me. Or if I touch my cap, that means something too. All right.
Welcome this.
The great thing about WordPress for me is community. I jumped back into WordPress with 2 feet a couple years ago for a health reason. I had to take a leave of absence. And during that time, I decided I was going to do things that I really love doing. And I wanted to do that every day. And one of the things was I wanted to get back up on stage and speak. So I'm here before you today. But I also wanted to get back into WordPress. The cool thing about WordPress are people like you. I've had such a great time getting to know people, and people are so friendly. And where it's not like other conferences where it's more business or networking. People in the WordPress community really want to help you succeed. Joanna Barse is a 32-year veteran and a senior partner emerita at McKinsey & Company. She's the author of 3 books, including the bestseller, How Remarkable Women Lead. This presentation is going to be a little different. I mentioned it's going to be interactive, so we need you to pair up during the course of the session. Presenting centered leadership, being at your best more of the time, please welcome Joanna Barse.
Okay. Beautiful voice. You should be on radio. Your voice is gorgeous. Hi. Okay. Don't sit by yourselves, please. Otherwise, you're going to be bored out of your skulls. So look behind you, look in front of you. Make sure when I say it's time for you to talk amongst yourselves that you have somebody to talk to. And I see a gentleman, there are a couple of people sitting as far away from me as they can get. I promise you, I'm from New York, but I will not hurt you. I am under 5 feet tall. I am not that strong. Okay, we only have an hour. I am a New Yorker. I do talk fast. If you have a problem with that and the poor person doing the captions in the back, thank you. I will try to slow down. I have just eaten a bag of M&Ms, however. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to work on leadership. And leadership doesn't mean that you have to be the boss and boss people around. It could mean that you want to have a greater impact in the work that you do, in the community you live in this unbelievable community, we could talk more about that, or just for yourself, because we're going to work on leading self today. I'm going to give you the roots of it, and if you're a Grateful Dead fan, you know the allusion I just made. And we are going to practice. The best way adults learn, as you know, is by doing. So that's why I'm asking you to sit with somebody. We're going to work on a few things together, kind of like appetizers. So as soon as you get into it, you will see me waving wildly that it's time to stop talking. And we'll do that over and over again till you get mad enough at me that we can stop. And then I'll give you a few resources at the end. If you're curious to learn more, there's a lot on the web that you can do, and books if you like to read. And the neighbor that you just met, hopefully you're sitting next to somebody you don't even know, and we'll get into that in a minute. So, where does this come from? I am going to start by giving you a story of myself, very briefly. I'm an old lady. I woke up in my 50th year, and I felt empty, which made no sense. I had been a partner in McKinsey, which is a worldwide consulting firm, for a long time. I had a husband I still love. I have 2 beautiful children, daughters, amazing. I lived in an apartment in New York City, if you're ever there. It faces the park, it's pretty nice. And I have a farm. Yes, I have cows and chickens and goats and sheep and all kinds of stuff. And so I wake up in my 50th year and I feel empty. And worse than that, I felt invisible. And you might think, why is she wearing such a colorful dress if she feels invisible all the time? And it's because the organizer said there would be a black curtain here and not to wear black because you would be invisible then. Okay, so I wake up on this day and I go to my husband, David, who is an ex-Israeli paratrooper. You kind of know what that looks like. And I say, I feel empty. And David says, why don't you buy yourself a pair of shoes? So I go, yeah, I know. He says, and if I can say it in this audience, you're going through your changes. It's all going to be fine. Buy the shoes. I buy the shoes. 2 weeks later, it comes back to me. Why do I feel this way? And I thought, it's because I'm not a leader. If I were a leader, you know, leaders tend to be like really pretty tall. They come into the room, they talk to each other, and they never even saw me. It could be because I am under 5 feet tall, I'm not sure. Or it could be something else. And I thought, I'm going to go and talk to these unbelievable, successful women all over the world. And I'll talk to men leaders too. I will find out what they have that I am missing. And when I get that, I'm going to drink that and I'm going to share it with anybody who will listen. And David says, this is a great idea. You got to give this a name that will make the men think it's important. And so I decided to call it the Blair Witch Project. Until I found out that somebody had already taken that name. So I broke a rule. I called it the McKinsey Centered Leadership Project. Why centered? We'll find out. I interviewed men and women all over the world. Here are a couple of pictures of some amazing people, including Christine Lagarde, now of the IMF, or that's John Donahoe, who briefly ran eBay, or Andrea Jung, who is now running Grameen Bank, who was running Avon at the time, and Wangeshi Mutu, who's an unbelievably talented artist from Kenya. And there was also a couple of other, well, there were 200. Now it's up to like 600 people. I keep interviewing people. I'm pretty shy, and I love to hear people's stories. And this is what came from that research. We did look at all the available research. If you're interested in leadership, you should know there are at least 350,000 books on the topic. Almost all of them are written by men for men, and they're pretty good, I'm sure. But we also looked at evolutionary psychology and gender studies. We looked at all kinds of psychology, positive psychology, and therein lies the secret. It's cross fields. We did a global survey with men and women from small, medium, and large companies who work and wanted to take this survey with us, and we found out that centered leadership is as good for all kinds of people as it is for women, and we've been in the field for over 15 years teaching it. and proselytizing. And I proselytize because at its core, it's really quite simple. It's self-awareness, the ability to understand what is going on in myself right now, to be able to step back and pause to make a choice, to recognize that what is happening in me is my choice. I can practice with new skills and new tools, and I can change if I choose or stay as I am. And if I do that simple thing, which takes a lifetime to learn, then I will have greater resilience, I will perform at a higher rate, and frankly, I will have more fulfillment. And that is what I learned. I learned that nothing was missing in me, but in fact, it was all there. I chose not to use it. And that why was it that I fell in love with every single person I interviewed, and I saw their faults. I saw what limited them, and it didn't stop me from loving them, but I couldn't do that at the time to myself. This is the gist of centered leadership, helping you to manage your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions in order to have a greater impact, not just on yourself, on the people around you, and on your organization or community. And there's nothing wrong with that. So it has 5 pieces. That's it. I couldn't remember these for the first year of doing this work, so if you don't remember it, that's okay. I'll be repeating this quite often. And we'll go through each one. We'll taste it. Meaning, which is about living into your own strengths. And we'll do an exercise on that. Framing and reframing, which is about in the middle of an upset, stepping back to be curious about yourself. What is going on in me? And the ability to shapeshift. Connecting, building trust between people. We'll work on that. Engaging, which is taking risk and then owning that without self-blame and judgment. And then finally, energizing, because we all work and live so hard, and we often forget that we are giving out energy all the time, and we need to recover and renew, and that's part of our responsibility. So we're going to go through all of those, and these 5, it turns out, are the distinguishing factors between being a good leader or manager and a remarkable one. On my book committee was a fellow no longer with us, Warren Bennis, the father of leadership. And he said to me, Joanna, why 5? I mean, I wrote the books. I wrote 16 books, just so you don't forget. And there are 23 leadership traits. So how come you have just 5? And I realized in that moment, this is the difference. This is not everything it takes to be a great leader, but these are the only things that matter. So why is that? It starts with you. Think of yourself and everybody you don't know in this room as an iceberg. So it's chilly in here, right? And you see and you judge. It's normal, it's human. You look at people and you say, what do they look like? What do they say or not say? What are they doing or not doing? And then we make a judgment. That's behavior. But just like you don't know anything about me and I don't know anything about you, underneath the waterline are all these thoughts and feelings that we have that we never disclose. We're in a meeting and we suddenly get angry and we forget to say, I'm angry. We just bark at the other person. And then underneath that, sometimes we don't even know it about ourselves, are the mindsets, the values, the beliefs that we hold true. And then way at the bottom, beyond the grasp of most of us, and certainly I don't know about you, and you don't know it about me, but that's who we really are. That is who we are at our deepest, most human being. What is it we need that we are not getting in the moment? That causes the behavior to shift. And so we're going to work on just becoming curious about ourselves. And from there, we're going to gain greater happiness, performance, resiliency. Pretty cool. So, are you with me so far? Okay. To do this, we have to take a small risk. And I promise you, no one will be hurt, And yes, you will be uncomfortable. You have to be uncomfortable because we're going to leave what makes us comfortable in order to learn and grow. Okay. I got one lady with me, and what about the rest of you? All right. So, we have to withhold judgment about ourselves. And we have to enter an open space. So I'm going to do the scariest thing I'm going to do today, which is to ask everybody here to unwind our feet and our arms. If they're all wrapped up, just unwind them. Get your feet on the floor. If you're short like me, you might have to squidgy up, technical term. And when you're ready, I'm going ahead of you. Please close your eyes. And take a deep breath in. Some of you know this from mindfulness. And an even deeper breath out. Let's do it again. And one more time. And start to feel yourself relaxing from the top of your head through the small muscles in your face. Feel any tension from today or home just dripping away. Feel your neck getting longer as your shoulders drop. Feel the tension flowing out through your arms and into your legs and through them, through your feet and into the floor. Feel the floor and the chair holding you safe. And of course, our brains are always active. I invite you to bring your attention to your breathing, to the sensation of the air coming in and out of your nose, of your chest rising and falling. And you might feel your neighbor or hear a noise, and that's okay. Just gently and easily bring your attention back to your breathing. And so we go from our breath to our thoughts and gently back to our breath. And if you would be so kind, take a moment in this state and think back over the past year to a moment in your work or in your life where you were at a peak, at a high point, where everything was going your way, where you were filled with positive energy, where you were achieving impact in your work. Take a moment and put yourself back and relive that experience. And in that moment, as you see yourself, what is it that you value most about yourself? Because what gives you positive energy and what you most value are your strengths. They are not your skills. When you're ready, eyes pointed at the floor, Slowly, slowly open them up. Coming back into the room. Picking your head up. Looking around at all these amazing people. Smiling because they're going to help you grow and you're helping them grow. If you like, take a stretch. And I'm going to invite you to spend literally 3 minutes talking to one neighbor about your strengths. Now, neighbor, you also will talk about your strengths. So, for the very shy people in the room, I suggest you go first, because I do know from experience what happens. For 3 minutes, you are fully engaged in the other person, and then you say, oh, we're out of time. Look at that. I'll catch you later. So really fast, top strengths. As you listen to your partner, if you hear skills, push deeper and say, tell me more. Go deeper than that. What lies underneath what you just said? Give it a try. 3 minutes, I'll count. Let's go. This is the talking part. There are 2 people right here. Welcome, Jennifer. She's right next to you. One of you, welcome, Catherine. Thank you. Wow. A lot of energy in this room. I don't have time to tell you what my strengths are, but I will the next time we meet, okay? If you know your strengths and you think about 5 or 10 minutes a day that you can use those strengths in your work, you will be amazed by what happens. If you're on a team and rather than complaining or feeling irritable about a team member, you start with that person's strengths, amazing things will happen. And if you start your project and start with what are we strong at, what are our strengths, then you will get to a different outcome. I have used this over and over again. On the individual level, strengths are an amazing energizer. on an organizational level, appreciative inquiry often gets us to solutions that we would not normally find. And those of you who have experienced it know the feeling. It's pretty cool. So let's go to the other side. This will be uncomfortable, and I'm not going to be here for more than 2 or 3 minutes, okay? So we're going to think about our darkest moment over the year. You don't even have to close your eyes. And if you're sitting next to the person that created the darkest moment for you over the year, just look away. Put yourself for a minute into the situation where you were not at your best. In fact, you could feel it potentially. Go into the moment. Maybe you got angry. Maybe you felt sick. Maybe you felt nothing at all. But boy, it was horrific, and you can feel it today just remembering it. Has everybody got one experience over the year? If you can't find one at work, go home. If you have a teenage child at home, I know you will have found it. And in that moment, ask yourself, what are you feeling physically, and what are you feeling emotionally? And in that moment, what do you think is going to happen to you? So everybody got something? Turn to your neighbors. This could be done 3 or 4 or 5. No names, not needed. And just think about those 3 questions as you describe your very worst moment over the year, what you're feeling physically, emotionally, and what you're thinking about. I'm going to stop you in 3 minutes. Go. Okay. Okay, who had a really bad feeling? Physical feeling. Where's my mic runner? Where'd he go? All right, we're going to, there you go. Joe, wave your hand. Okay, there's somebody in the back, the lady with the hat. Where is it? Bad feeling. Come on, let's do this. Come in the audience. People at the back usually have the worst feelings. So let's go back here. Okay, who had a bad feeling? Come on, come on. He did. Oh, not me. Oh, no.
It's kind of personal. It's bad.
It's personal, but what did you feel? I don't need to know your situation.
My feeling was like a gut-wrenching feeling where I got ripped open and like a scar, you know, and being used at the end of the day.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. It was a combine of like death and love at the same time.
Death and love.
Yeah.
Okay, stop
and
right
it was
there.
Disruptive.
Disruptive. Yeah, gut-wrenching.
Is
Okay,
that all
yeah. I love it. Thank you so much. Who had a different feeling? Okay, lady in the back. Nice. Right back here. This beautiful lady.
I was numb.
Numb.
I felt very angry, like my insides were going to explode.
Yeah,
Yes.
explosion.
Yes.
Nice. And emotionally, do you know what you were feeling?
Anger.
Anger. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, let's go to this side of the room. Who had a completely different bad feeling? Okay, Josepha. Or Josepha.
Josepha, yes. I felt betrayed.
Okay, how's that feel in your body?
In my body, it feels like not being able to listen anymore, and also my hands hurt.
Your hands hurt. Beautiful. Wait a minute, your hands hurt, and you put up a shield.
No, I just,
Okay.
probably couldn't listen anymore.
Yeah. Listen to the hand. And then right back here is Catherine. What were you feeling in your body?
I was feeling very, very nauseated. Couldn't eat for a few days.
Did you throw up?
I did.
Yeah, love it. Okay, but over here. All right, one more. On this side, who had a completely different feeling? Here's a person in the purple sweater.
I just felt like a failure.
Well, wait a minute. What does that feel like physically?
You just feel cold and just kind of hopeless.
Cold. That's a new one for me. I love it. And hopeless is the emotion. Awful. Let's give them a hand for explaining it to us, because they have something that we need, which is they know what they're feeling. Some of you may have found this difficult and couldn't actually describe your physical feelings. I put you into an amygdala hijack situation. What does that mean? Physically, something should have been happening. Did anybody sweat or get red or just feel really hot? Yeah, I could see right now. Hot. Just like, ugh. Okay, some people get dizzy. Some people literally drain. Anybody feel like, God, I wasn't even there? Just draining into the floor. Sort of like that. And some people just actually get sick. Did anybody cry or feel like they would cry? That often happens. It happens to me all the time. And some people feel it right here. Get really tight, or in your heart area, get really, really tight. A little bit like what the gentleman was saying. Or even not being able to breathe. Knowing your physical symptom is extraordinary, and you want to have that, because that's your first warning that you're having an amygdala hijack. A lot of people mistake physical feelings for emotional feelings. And particularly a lot of men tell me, I don't even know what I was feeling emotionally. So if you do, that's extraordinary. Because now you've got both clues. And the reason you want these is your brain in an amygdala hijack is not actually working. Your executive brain has stopped working. Why is that? Because the amygdala, which is a small organ near your hypothalamus, has sent adrenaline and cortisol through your veins into your body so that you can get away from danger. Because it does not know whether this is a dinosaur about to eat you or you're having emotional distress. Same thing to the amygdala. So if you know, then what can you do? You can pause. You can literally pause yourself. Hey, Joanna, I'm having an amygdala hijack right now. I feel the pit in my stomach, and I feel my heart beating. So let me just close my eyes, hard to do in a large McKinsey meeting, and breathe. In Japan, they do this. If you can't do that, there are some things that you can do. Physical things you can do is just exhale. It's really interesting that we all breathe without thinking about it most of the time. When we're hijacked, we forget to breathe. And that can be dangerous. So just exhaling, naturally breath will come in. Oxygen will fill your body, and in about 10 seconds, your executive brain will begin to function. Mine takes much longer. And you can do what your grandmother told you to do, which is to count to 10. If you can't do that, then you can do something physical. You can take a sip of water. You can feel your feet on the floor, your butt in the chair, and say to yourself, I am safe. And that's usually enough to do it. One person told me she pushes her chair away from the desk to get distance. Anything you can do to waste 10 seconds and give yourself that time, which feels very long but actually isn't, because everybody else is also having an amygdala hijack. When you're having a conflicting meeting, you're not the only one. If you can, ask a question. You can do it silently in your head. You can do it out loud. So you can ask yourself, what can I learn here? What's going on for me and for the others? What is it I truly want to create? And when you get your question, it becomes your mantra. I'll give you an example. So I was a consultant for 32 years, which is ridiculous. I used to be 6 foot tall, and now you look at me, I'm a shadow of my former self. And I went to a giant retailer to do a supply chain study. Anybody here from production or supply chain or trained in that area would know it's a skill. I mean, you really need to know something. And I knew nothing about supply chain, which is why I brought a team of 10 people, all supply chain experts. And we were sitting underground, no windows, with a giant light beaming on this table and a huge screen right behind me that was beaming that horrible light, whatever that's, that sort of like that. And we had to wait. We're waiting for the client to come in. They told us 90 minutes, and then your arch enemy is going to come in after you to present because it's a competition. So I'm there. I've briefed everybody. I'm the most senior person. And then they file in, literally, the C's. You know the C's, the CEO, the CIO, the CMO, the CFO, the other C's, I don't know who they are, and then behind them, all the direct reports, and behind them, people they must have taken off the street. There were 30 people in that room. And then it started. I gave my bit, I explained what we were going to do. And 89 of the 90 minutes go by, and I'm thinking, I'm going to get out of here alive. This is good. I don't really know where the exit is and how to get out of here. So it started. You know what this is, right? What is this? The downward spiral. It always goes down for some reason. So it starts. A guy, I'm just going to call him John to protect his innocence, or not, says, I just have one question for Joanna. Is right. And I say, oh my God, I don't know what question he's going to ask, but I don't know the answer. How would I even know I don't know the answer? This starts to go. And it's getting a little bit faster. And he goes, Joanna. And I just thought, that tone, he's going for me. He's got his big guns out now. He says, when you said supply chain was a competitive strategic advantage in the first 2 or 3 minutes of this meeting, I'm thinking, what did I say? I don't remember what I said in meeting 2 of this meeting. What does that even mean, strategic advantage? I don't know. He says, what did you mean by that? And then it goes. Then I'm going down, and I'm going, I can't think of anything. I can't even, my brain's not working. And that little voice, do you have one in your head? That little voice starts, and it goes, Joanna, can't you think of something to say? You need to be talking now. They're going to think you're stupid. They're going to think you're stupid because you are stupid. And this is way rumination works. It gets a hold of me, and I think my husband doesn't love me anymore. I yelled at my children. I'm a horrible mother, and I'm really down at the bottom. 60 eyes staring at me. This is going to be good, they say. Because I'm stuck. I am literally having the fight, flight, freeze. I'm a freezer, right? You can't see me now because I'm frozen. Animals can't see unless you move, except for humans for some reason. So it is with huge effort that I pull myself up. Tears are literally, I can't even see, my eyeglasses are wet. And I say the dumbest thing I have ever said in my consulting career. I say, if you don't put product on the shelf, people can't buy them. And they all look away. It's like, oh my God. Oh my God. And then my team comes up to me, and they have such concern in their eyes that I am now crying, and I just run out, and I run literally. I'm underground somewhere. I'm running to get to a car. I get to my car, I get in the car, I call my husband, I tell him what happens, and he says, don't cry, you're $1 million. And I say, that's not enough money to do anything in New York City. He says, okay, $100 million. I literally dream about it. 3 weeks later, I call the CEO. We get the study. I'm sure you're relieved. And I fire myself. That's what amygdala hijacks do. We literally make our worst fears come true. We can stop that by learning to pause and reframe. Reframe from problem to solution. But in the interest of time, we'll stop with the shrimp and move on to the beef. I'd like you to think about trust. Think of somebody in your community or at home or at work, whatever you do, a customer, supplier, who you do not trust at all. No names. Think about what it is about this person you do not trust. One defining characteristic. Everybody got one? Without telling me who the person is, because he or she is not in this room, I'm pretty clear, they are not in this room. Just shout it out to get it out of your body. Just shout it out. 1, 2, 3. Oh, come on, people. I'm going to try that again. The defining characteristic, like evil. 1, 2, 3, shout it. Love that. Okay, worst thing I'm going to tell you. I promise, it's all up from here. The characteristic that you just shouted out is also in you. Yikes. We see it, we have it, we own it. So think about something you admire about anyone. Could be a family member, a historic member, somebody from a movie, somebody from work. Just think about this person you truly admire and what is the defining characteristic you admire about them. That's also in you. If you see it, you have it. So, what is trust? Trust is the ability to do 4 things. First, we all care about reliability. If you're creating a project and somebody is not delivering what they promised, it puts you and everybody around you in a difficult position. So we tend to take that for granted. So it's only one element of trust, but it's usually the first thing people think of, which is don't make promises you can't keep. So if anybody said, this person just lets me down every time, that's reliability. The second one, humanity's favorite. I don't care if I'm in China, Kuwait, California, or South Africa. People hate individuals who are not congruent, which means that what they say, what they believe, what they do has to be aligned. People hate that about an individual who has a hidden agenda, who's really out for themselves, but actually pretends I'm totally for the team. Like it's all about us, right? As long as I'm the best. We hate that about people. Openness. This is a really interesting one. I typically find more men than women are afraid to be open because a lot of people think about openness as weakness, and it's actually not. Openness is not telling people what your partner said to you the other day and that you kicked the dog out of anger or that you had a terrible dinner. Openness is your ability to say, this is what I'm thinking and feeling. These are my limitations. This is what I'm concerned about. And getting that out on the table, particularly if you're the project leader or if you're talking to a customer or a supplier. The last one, acceptance, is really interesting that more women than men tend to fall short on acceptance. And I have found both men and women have, if you are the kind of person who was an A++ student in school, who's striving for perfection, anybody in the room like that? There must be at least one. Yeah, I see. Like the hands are like, that's me. It was definitely me. Definitely me. You know who you are because you're ashamed when you're not up at 105 for a test that was only graded to 100. Right? Or you are ashamed when somebody says it was all good except for. Now, I am married to a person who wings it, who, routinely got C's and D's in subjects he didn't care about because he's a mathematician. That's the only thing he cares about. So a lot of you probably are very self-accepting if you're like that person. So what acceptance is the ability to withhold judgment. To accept that if you're not doing a good job, I might have to let you go, but I still care about you as a human being. I'm going to still treat you with dignity. Acceptance is something that we can practice doing. So you know when a person is not accepting, they criticize, they micromanage. Know that they're doing it to themselves more than that they're doing it to you. It starts with self. So if this is you, if acceptance is something you'd like to get stronger at, then there is one small assignment. And if it's your kid, this is an important assignment as well, which is each night before you go to bed, ask yourself what's one new thing you appreciate about yourself. Just one new thing. And if you put it in a journal, they will add up over the weeks and months. And you will begin to retrain your brain to appreciate. Because appreciation trumps judgment. And then you turn to your coworkers and start with what do you actually appreciate about them. And what we're doing is we're releasing love, kindness, and generosity. It's what you start with, even though you could be irritated and frustrated by the lack of progress on the project. If you do these 4 things, you build trust. So rather than asking, why don't I trust you, reframe that question to be, what can I do to get you to trust me more? How can I inspire you to trust me? And the person will usually tell you, and one of these 4 things is important to them. Like at McKinsey, nobody cares about anything other than reliability. So there are a lot of backstabbing people there because it's not important to them. It might be really important to you. So be sure to tell people on your team, this is what builds trust with me, and now I want to know how to build your trust in me. Okay, 2 more to go. Think about your next biggest challenge or opportunity, if you're an opportunity-based person. And one of you in the pair will get free coaching, and one of you will learn the secrets of being a great coach. So you figure it out between the 2 of you. Before I give you your time, the person who's going to get the coaching, we want you to just think about the upsides. If I meet this challenge, if I take on this opportunity, what becomes possible for me? And what more? And what more? Just that upper left-hand box. And when you really sorted that out, think about the lower right-hand box. And what is the downside of doing nothing, of staying as I am? So the people who want to coach, here's the secret. First, you just look really sincere. Usually like this. And all you have to do is go, tell me more. You obviously know the answer. Keep it to yourself. Let the person do their own problem solving. And just go, and what else? That's it. So you get free coaching, you get to practice being a coach, you get 4 minutes, find your pair, and go. This is the talking part. I'm spiraling down. You're leaving. Oh, no. Beautiful. What we're doing is retraining our brains to start with the upside. Some of you are optimists, and so you start with the upside. Anybody here consider themselves an extreme optimist? Yeah. For you guys, sleep at it for 24 hours. Because if you start with the upside and nobody's holding you back, so you have two choices, either to go to sleep and really look at it in the morning, or have a pessimist by your side. So you're a little bit different in that you always start with the upside, and you never see the downside. And in fact, you always see the downside of not doing anything. You're very fast in this particular exercise. For you, a pre-mortem is a beautiful thing. Bring your 4 most pessimistic friends together, and they know who they are. Eeyore and all his pals. And then have them sit together and tell them your idea and have them tell you the worst thing that could happen, short of Martians coming down on Earth, something that has a 2% black swan probability. And then figure out how to mitigate those things. And then you're ready, you're good to go. Because optimism is a wonderful thing. A lot of us work to gain that skill. If you have it, it's a gift, you have it. So you can retrain your brain. And in fact, those of us who don't think of the upside have voices in our head, and those who only think of the upside have different voices in our head. So does anybody hear the critic in their head? It's a little voice, usually your mother, and constantly talking to you. Like with me, it would be, oh, have you gained weight? Right? It's just, it's always something. It's always something. So voices are actually a serious business. If you read pop psychology, they tell you to shut the voice up, and it doesn't work. The more you try to suppress a voice, the louder it will talk until you act out. So for everybody, for coaches and for coachees, think about this. Think about your opportunity or your challenge. And hear these voices in turn. So what is that coach? Even if you were not an athlete in high school, you can imagine a coach from all of the movies you've undoubtedly seen. What voice in your head can coach you? What is the coach telling you? Take 30 seconds, think about your challenge, and hear the voice. The coach might be telling you, yeah, I know it's hard, and I know you don't know what to do, and that's okay, because the only way you're going to get better is by doing it. What is the wise person? I particularly am a Yoda fan. What does Yoda say about this challenge? What does Yoda say? You know what Yoda says, right? Any Yoda aficionados here? You are? Yes, in the voice. There is no try. I'm not green, I know. I'm trying my best here, guys. There is do and do not, right? Or is it or? I think it's do or do not. Do or do not. Hear a voice of a wise person in your head to help you with your challenge. Hear a visionary. Maybe you're the visionary. Hear your voice. Hear the voice. Wow, you will probably fail. But if you do this thing and it works, that's going to be unbelievable. Isn't that exciting? Doesn't that fill you with energy? Just thinking about the way the world could be with your new project. And then hear the critic. Hear the critic on the loudspeaker with everybody else. A client literally in her office put 4 chairs and a 5th chair. You can try this at home because none of you work in an office with glass, right? Glass cubbies. If you work in an office where everybody in the office can see you, then try it at home. You do. 5 minutes. Don't you worry. Don't you? So, in your chair, be you. In the other 4 chairs, move yourself to each chair, I kid you not, and be the voice and say it out loud. As you go through each of the 4 voices, Listen to what you're saying because you're telling yourself a truth. And then go back to your own chair and recognize that you are not your voices. You're just the author of those voices. You are you, and those voices can help you. Some people are really good about getting their own board of directors, not imaginary. People you trust, but they're going to tell you stuff that's good for them. These voices are there to protect and help you, and they exist whether you hear them or not, so use them. And if it's your critic, buy them some jewelry. What can I say? Okay. Energizing. Everybody a little like worn out by me at this point? Usually this is the case. Think about your 4 sources of energy. Think about physically, you've been sitting still, pretty still for a while. How active and healthy are you in general and in this moment? In your mind? How focused are you right now? How alert and present are you in this room? Think about your heart. You've had some conversations that are pretty deep with somebody sitting next to you who you may or may not know. And that connection is generally of the heart. And then spiritually, even if you are not a religious person, you are a spiritual person. So are you in fact investing in what matters for you, in what's important to you? So you think about your energy, just give yourself a score. Every 90 minutes, just like computers, we go to sleep. Asleep at the switch, we need to wake it up. We need to wake it up, and we can wake it up in a number of ways. And I'm going to do one quick exercise. You ready? You with me? Okay, everybody stand up for just a minute. 1 minute, that's it. And if you're in high heels, I don't think anybody is. I was going to say, take off your shoes. What the hell? Screws. Turn to a person, not the person you've been yabbering to for the last hour. Just turn to a person and just tell them one thing you're grateful for. Listen to one thing they're grateful for. Thank them and sit down, please. Go. Did it? Yeah, good. You can jump. Thank you. Whoa. On your 4 sources of energy, did anybody go up? Did anybody go up on any one of the 4 sources? Anybody feel more energy now? 1 minute later. Good. Anybody feel less energy? Okay. It can happen. It can happen. We'll talk about that at the break. Okay, what's going on here? We all wake up and we want to be high positive, high energy, positive energy. We're winners, right? We want to get out of bed and be really excited about what we're doing. And we generally are, even if you're a slow riser and you need 3 cups of coffee. It's okay. You are usually in an up, positive mood. And what happens? You get to work. And as you work and people give you problems and you start to realize that it's not going the way you want to, and now you have a deadline and it doesn't look like you're going to meet it, and now people are not only not doing what you want, they're making mistakes, and you have to fix it for them, and then your kids start screaming, and everybody's getting angry, and you start getting angry, but you're going to get this project done, and you're going to work your hardest because you are fantastic, right? You're the only one around you who's fantastic, and you know that. Now you're in high negative energy, and you're going to get it done. And if you work like that for week upon week and month upon month because you're on the Gutenberg project or something even more important than that, you wake up one morning like this, and now you're in low negative energy. And this is when you say, I don't think I'm going to get out of bed today. I hate my job. I think I'll quit. My kids can get their own breakfast. The dog can walk itself. Now, if you're grieving or someone you know is very ill, you can be in low negative energy for quite some time. And it's okay. There is no good or bad here. The only thing is you must go to low positive every 90 minutes if you can. No matter where you are on this map. You're having a fantastic team meeting. Take a moment, just a minute, to do gratitude. Take 10 minutes to go outside and breathe the air. Take time to drink a glass of water. Whatever it is for you, do something that helps you recover. It is a responsibility. And in fact, think about what you could do every morning or every afternoon. Think about what's going to get in your way. Deadlines, people's calls. Think about who's going to help you or what's going to help you do it. You're going to set an alarm. You're going to do a ritual with your team so everybody takes a break at the same time. Whatever you have to do to practice recovery. And think about, most important of all, the mindset shift. Go back to the iceberg, under the water. What will help you want to do this? I used to believe that if I could be Madame Curie, that would be the best thing in the world. Work myself to death and die on the streets of Paris. A little radiation maybe, but that's okay. I worked to death. I thought that was the best thing in life. Now, let's not decompose what's wrong with me, but think about it. I had to shift that mindset to actually taking recovery time will make me more productive. I need to do it for my people because, frankly, nobody really wants to work with a high negative energy person, which I was most of the time. And think about what becomes possible for you. If you do this, think about how much more of you can come to work or come to your life. This works in and out of work. That's called a recovery practice. It takes a while to build up a ritual. For some people, it's 3 weeks. For some people, it's 6 months of active, conscious work. But once you do this, it's pretty great. So I get up every hour and walk to the window and look out at the world. Just love to do it. And then I come back to work feeling refreshed. What will you do? Because Joe says we're out of time, at the break, I hope you will take out of here one intention for yourself based on one of the 5 doors that we walked through today. One intention that you choose, consciously choose, and one action that you can take next week to start to live into that intention. If you want more, and I can't believe that you do, but I'm still active, you can find me at McKinsey. You can find me online. I have a friggin' beautiful WordPress site that was made to me by Chris and Michelle. If you're in the audience, thank you very much. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I just wish I knew how to update it. But anybody can help me. I'm introverted and I'm learning. And instead, you can also find me on LinkedIn. And these are the books. You don't have to be a female to read the first one. Please, they're the head of a major oil company in Europe read it and said, oh my God, I see myself in these women. Is there something wrong with me? And the point is, no, there's something right with him. Because we are all human beings, and we all have the capacity to be have these 5 capabilities. And if you do that, you are already awesome. You will be awesomer. And you will have more energy, I promise you, and greater happiness. And I will not sell you the Brooklyn Bridge now. This stuff where I'm told no swearing. So this stuff does work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right. As mentioned, lunch is on the 3rd floor in Hall B. Take the large